Most of us stay silent, not because we agree, but because we're afraid to speak up. Picture this. You're sitting in a meeting. You've prepared, you've thought it through, and you finally share your idea. But before the sentence even lands, someone interrupts, or worse, the room just moves on. Your manager nods politely, changes the topic, and suddenly your voice is gone. You feel the sting, not from rejection, but from silence swallowing your words. It's a quiet kind of pain, the kind that makes you doubt whether speaking up was ever worth it. Modern offices are filled with people like this, quiet minds with loud thoughts, waiting for the right moment to be heard. But the truth is, that right moment almost never comes. And yet, over 2,400 years ago, one man mastered the art of speaking truth in the face of power, calmly, clearly, and without fear. Socrates didn't shout. He didn't demand attention. He asked questions so powerful they outlived empires. What if you could do the same? What if Socrates could guide you through your next tough conversation, the one about your raise, your boundaries, or maybe even your exit? Because sometimes the most important voice in the room is the one brave enough to ask the right question. Every conflict begins when we try to win, not when we try to understand. That's the quiet genius of Socrates. He never entered a conversation to dominate, he entered to discover. He didn't tell people what to think, he asked them why they thought it. And that simple shift from proving to probing changes everything. Picture this at work. Instead of saying, "I deserve a raise," you pause and ask, "What does the company value most when it rewards people?" Now the tone shifts. You're not demanding, you're inviting. You're opening space for truth to emerge, not forcing it into the room. Or imagine a disagreement with a colleague. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," you ask, "Can you help me understand how you see it differently?" That one question turns confrontation into collaboration. Because when you seek to understand, people stop defending and start reflecting. Every sincere question lowers the temperature and raises the truth. It's hard to attack someone who's genuinely curious. That's the power of Socratic communication. It disarms the ego by appealing to reason, not rivalry. But what happens when curiosity meets resistance? Or worse, when your questions threaten someone with more power? True courage isn't loud. It's calm curiosity under pressure. In ancient Athens, Socrates stood before generals, politicians, and poets, the most powerful people in the city. They hated being questioned, but he never raised his voice. He stayed composed, asking the kind of questions that made arrogance crumble under its own weight. He wasn't calm because he was fearless. He was calm because he knew the difference between truth and approval. Approval feeds the ego. Truth feeds the soul. Now think about your workplace. Power rarely shouts, it whispers. A boss may smile, but their tone says, "Don't go there." A colleague may nod, but their silence screams, "Stay small." We've all felt that subtle tension, the unspoken rule that keeps people polite, productive, and painfully quiet. But Socrates wouldn't yield to comfort. He believed that unquestioned authority breeds quiet suffering in the city and in the soul. If you avoid discomfort, he taught, you also avoid discovery. That's the paradox of growth. You can't reach clarity if you refuse the tension that reveals it. So, how do you use that same wisdom to ask for something bold, like a raise, a boundary, or even your exit, without sounding entitled or naive? True persuasion begins where defense ends. When you walk into that meeting to talk about your raise, the instinct is to prove your worth, to justify, to list, to push. But Socrates would do the opposite. He'd turn confrontation into cooperation through inquiry. Instead of defending, he'd start exploring. He might say, "I've been reflecting on how I can create more value for the team. From your perspective, what would meaningful growth look like for this role?"
One single question shifts the entire tone. You've just reframed the conversation from "I want more" to "How can I become more valuable?" Suddenly, it's not about your need, it's about shared purpose. You've invited your manager into reasoning, not reaction. And that's the hidden power of the Socratic approach. Socrates never demanded respect, he invited it. Because when reasoning enters the room, ego quietly leaves. In that space of logic and curiosity, mutual respect grows almost automatically. But Socrates knew something else, something harder. Not every conversation ends in agreement. Sometimes understanding the truth doesn't lead to promotion, it leads to conflict or even the door. So what happens when your clarity costs you comfort? When the truth you speak means it's time to leave? To leave with integrity is a higher victory than to stay in denial. Socrates could have escaped his sentence. His friends had arranged everything, a ship, a plan, a chance to live. But he refused. Calmly he asked, "Would it be just to save myself unjustly?" That single question separated him from the crowd. He valued integrity over comfort, principle over position. In our world, the trial looks different, but the test is the same. Maybe it's when your boss asks you to compromise your ethics. Maybe it's when a team culture starts rewarding silence over honesty. Or when staying one more month means betraying what you stand for. That's when the Socratic path becomes clearest. When your values clash with your environment, silence becomes self-betrayal. And the most philosophical thing you can do is walk away with grace. Say it simply, calmly, without ego. I respect what this team stands for, but I realize my path may lead elsewhere. There's no bitterness, no scene, only clarity. You're not running from authority, you're remaining loyal to your principles. That's what Socratic freedom truly means. Not rebellion for its own sake, but alignment with truth, even when it costs comfort. And yet the deepest lesson of all isn't about work, it's about the soul behind every word we speak. Every external conflict mirrors an inner one. Before we face another person, we are already facing ourselves. The doubts, the pride, the fear of being misunderstood, they all whisper before a single word leaves our lips. Socrates understood this long before the modern workplace existed. He said, "To find yourself, think for yourself." Before you walk into that meeting, pause. Ask yourself, am I seeking truth or validation? Do I want change or control? Because often the hardest conversation isn't with your boss, it's with your own fear. It's the quiet battle between honesty and comfort. He taught that wisdom begins in self-questioning, not as punishment, but as purification. The moment your inner dialogue becomes clear, your outer one becomes powerful. When your voice no longer defends your ego but serves your truth, something changes. People listen differently. Tension dissolves. And even disagreement feels peaceful. This is the heart of the Socratic Guide. It was never about winning debates. It was about aligning words with truth and truth with peace. A soft realization that the real conversation, the one that shapes every raise, every exit, every connection, begins inside you. In an age of emails, metrics, and endless meetings, one truth remains. The Socratic method is still the most powerful communication tool we have. You don't need a title to lead, only the courage to ask honest questions. Don't speak to impress, speak to inquire. Don't debate to win, listen to understand. Because every question rooted in sincerity transforms tension into understanding. It turns workplace politics into partnership, and it turns confrontation into clarity. Socrates proved that real strength doesn't come from louder voices, it comes from deeper thinking. He who asks with humility doesn't lose control, he gains wisdom. If this changed how you see tough conversations, subscribe. And let's keep exploring how ancient wisdom makes modern work more human.